Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I will react to why the US prison system is the worst in the developed world. Since the last video where I reacted on the video, is the US becoming a dystopia? I became a member of Second Thought, so I mean Patreon member, so I support him now over Patreon. You can do the same if you want. He's a great YouTuber. I would suggest this if you feel like doing this, and if you also have a similar political ideology, and if you can afford it. I myself, for myself, it's also not easy to support him. I mean, I have also not much money, but I'm doing a bit. No, I support him a bit. So this video, right? The US prison system is the worst in the developed world. Also about the, here I can say also a few things I didn't mention maybe, or I can say again, which I also said in the video, which is now a bit boring because there's nothing to react to, about the German prison, because the YouTuber who owns this video, blocked it, so it could not be seen by anyone. And then I deleted it. And then I made the extra small video, but it is not so interesting. So here I can say maybe a few of the things I said then in the video. And yeah, the United States prison system. Let's see.
This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon.
Yeah, now through me also for future videos.
If you'd like to help me produce more content like this and get early access to every new video, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought. You'll often hear the claim that the United States is the freest place on Earth, a bastion of personal and societal freedom. For such a supposedly free nation, we sure have a lot of people behind bars. While many rights and freedoms have been stripped away over the past few decades, from freedom of the press to freedom of assembly, in this video we're going to focus specifically on the US prison system. A system that, by just about every metric, is the worst in the developed world. Let's start with some basic facts. The US...
I mean, I know it already, but yeah, it's very shocking what he will say, you know?
has the most incarcerated people of any nation on Earth, both by sheer numbers and per capita. As of June 2020, there were 2,121,000 prisoners currently serving time in the US, and a total of over 10 million in the prison system, which includes those waiting for trial and those on parole. This number is higher than nations with vastly larger populations like China and India. It's higher than countries the US considers more authoritarian, like Russia or, again, China. It's even higher than the greatest of all boogeymen, the Soviet Union, at the height of Stalin's power. As for our per capita rating, the US incarcerates roughly 655 people per 100,000. No other OECD nation comes close. The UK sits at 140, Canada 107, France 105.
I'm wondering where Germany will be, but probably also around 100 or so. I mean, I don't see us being much differently than our other European neighbors like France and UK, so probably also around 100 people.
Germany 77.
77, he even mentioned this. I wasn't sure if he would mention this. 77.
China barely cracks 150. All the countries the US likes to cast as authoritarian hellholes, every single one of them incarcerates fewer people and often in far more humane facilities. The US represents 4% of the total world population, but 22% of the world...
That's very shocking. I think there are in total around 10 million, 12 million people behind bars in prisons, and with 2 million or so, United States, very high, yeah.
Prison population. When you talk about prison and prisoners, all the racists tend to come out of the woodwork and say things like, well, those other places are all one race, and immigrants are just inherently criminal. Of course, these statements have no basis in reality. Among roughly equally diverse nations and countries with similarly sized immigrant populations, our incarceration rate is still vastly higher in every case. We also need to remind these people that white people go to jail too. They're just let off the hook far more frequently than any other race. But we'll get to that later. Now that you have an idea of just how much of an obsession we have with locking people up, let's talk about some specifics. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that I identify one common thread that ties together
spoiler, profit.
All of the worst tendencies of the American empire. Profit. Everything is driven by the insatiable urge to accumulate greater and greater sums of money. The stock market demands perpetual growth. Corporations must make more this year than they did last year. The prison industrial complex is no different. We tend to think of prisons as self-contained entities, cruel but untainted by the tendrils of capitalism. This is not the case. Companies have always been eager to work with prisons to increase their profits. The companies that provide food to
Cheap labor, you know. It is very inhumane and terrible what I have heard so far and what I know what will still come. I mean, also they have the death penalty in the United States. I would like really to know more about then how the Chinese and how the Russians and other nations do it. I mean, some of them have the death penalty. In Russia, there is no death penalty. In China and India, there is a death penalty, but how the prisons are also functioning. I know about one Russian prison. I have watched one video about one, and this was cruel, but much more humane than the United States tough prison. So I would like to know more about other prisons too. So if you know some videos about this, tell me.
prisoners are only too happy to sell nutritionally deficient slop to the prison industrial complex. It's cheap to produce and nets them a healthy profit. The phone companies that provide basic call functionality to prisoners charge exorbitant pay-per-minute rates because they know how desperate these poor people are to speak to their loved ones. Transportation companies make a killing shuttling prisoners to and from court appearances and between prisons. But more egregious than these examples is the practice of modern-day slavery.
This already looks like slavery, how the people are treated, how they are chained to one another, and it already looks very much like slavery.
You've probably heard that the state of California routinely puts inmates to work fighting fires. Do you know what they're paid for putting their lives on the line? $2 per day, or $2 per hour when they're actively fighting fires. The minimum wage in the US is $7.25 per hour, which is already absurdly low and has been determined not to be a livable wage. Prisoners are paid $2 per hour at best for their labor, less than 1/3 of the federal minimum.
How they are laying there in the big hall and one by one, that already looks very much like slavery also. Yeah, terribly.
Minimum wage. But wait, it gets worse. Incarcerated people have their own minimum wage. Care to guess what it is? It's not $2. It's 12 cents per hour. Some states...
I mean, compared to what I have seen in the video, which is not anymore available, but you can watch it yourself. It's from the YouTuber YouTube channel 60 Minutes. The German prison about this prison, and compared to what I see here, it is like on two different planets. So also there are some videos about there's a video about a Norwegian prison and a Swedish prison and a Finnish prison, but yeah, the difference is like two different universes or worlds or planets.
Including my home state of Texas, do not require incarcerated workers to be paid at all. Would you sell an hour of your life for 12 cents? Of course you wouldn't. But the people trapped in the prison system have no choice in the matter. They are required to do the work that is demanded of them. This is slavery. In the past year, inmates have been put to work manufacturing hand sanitizer and PPE, washing hospital laundry, and digging mass graves for COVID victims. In normal years, they provide forced labor for thousands of US corporations, including big names like McDonald's, Wendy's, Tyson, Verizon, Sprint, Fidelity, Walmart, JCPenney, and IBM.
The only company which I know is of course Walmart, but I mean I have never been in a Walmart because they don't have buildings here or stores here, but IBM I know as a company, and McDonald's of course, but that's terrible that you use slavery. These companies that they use slavery to increase their profit. It's such a, I mean, how I understand the prison system and how they understand the prison system is so, I can really not describe it in a better way than different universes. Because I think the prison system should rehabilitate people and show them that a better life is possible, better, more humane life is possible. They should the guards, the people who work there should help the prisoners and the inmates to At least with the tougher crimes, or also with all kind of crimes, but with murder or rape or whatsoever bigger crimes, that is more important that they are mentally also fixed. But also the people who have just, I don't know, stolen something valuable or something which is not so terribly wrong, but it's not, I mean, like murder or so. It's on a different level. So all of the people should get help to have a better life when they go out of prison, and have a better perspective. So that's my approach to prisoners is so much different than the approach which I see here, which is just extract so much money out of them as possible, and when they go back into prison, even better, then you have them again as your slaves. So that's terrible.
Angry yet? It still gets worse. With each passing year, America finds new ways to extract profits from human life. Let's talk about private prisons. As the war on drugs ramped up in the 1980s, federal prisons began to become overcrowded. The solution? Turn to the private sector to build new prisons for all this excess human inventory. The government contracts a private company to build the prisons, that company locks up the overflow prisoners, and in exchange they receive a fixed rate for each inmate. They are paid for each person they imprison. See the problem here?
Yeah, I mean, as capitalism works, when you get money out of this, you want to do more of this, so you have more money. So, when locking up people gives you money, then you have to lock up even more people and more people, so you get even more money. Capitalism is just terribly.
The prison slave labor market is a financial incentive not to pursue prison reform. It would damage the profits of thousands of US companies. But by adding for-profit prisons into the mix, cutting out the middleman, and simply making money off of human storage units, we've ensured that no meaningful reform will ever pass, at least not without a mass movement to demand it. Think about it. Who profits from the existence of private prisons? Private companies are given multi-hundred-million-dollar contracts, then their executives turn around and donate huge sums of that same money to politicians who will support private prisons. It's a never-ending cycle. Corrupt politicians are making money, private prisons are making money, and thousands of US companies are making money from literal slave labor. It makes perfect sense within the US capitalist framework. CoreCivic, formerly Corrections Corporation of America, is the largest private prison manager in the country. In 2019, they raked in $1.98 billion in revenue, all on the backs of exploited human beings, stuffed into their prisons with a price tag on each one. What's even more ridiculous is that the vast majority of the private prison contracts contain a lockup quota. That is, a guaranteed percentage of occupancy for the duration of the agreement. Most of these quotas are set at 90% occupancy, with some even landing an insane 100%. So, in a time when crime rates are the lowest they've been in decades, these private prisons are guaranteed to have their cells filled. If those cells aren't filled, they're still paid as if they were. And guess who pays the bill? US taxpayers. There was one hideous...
So it makes no sense at all. So, why should this be a thing in the capitalistic world? So, I mean, that they get money even for empty cells. So when there is this cruel approach to humanity that you make money of human people, why then you also get money if the cells are empty? So
incident in 2008, which became known as the Kids for Cash scandal.
I think the police is already taking care about that the cells are filled with humans, because they arrest people very easily. Yeah, they can arrest people and so. But if the crime rate is low, why should they still get paid for the thing? It doesn't make sense in how I understand capitalism.
2 judges in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania were found to have been accepting bribes from for-profit correctional facilities to dole out ridiculously harsh sentences for minors. Thousands of children were slapped with extended stays in these private facilities for crimes as minor as making fun of their assistant principal on MySpace. There are few things more depraved than putting innocent children in jail to line your own pocket. So, to recap, the US started the war on drugs.
It's also terrible if you do this with not children, but with children it's also terrible. But I would not say that it is even more terrible than with other people. It's just inhumane in general.
Drugs which US groups like the CIA were shuttling into the country, began locking people up at unprecedented rates for nonviolent drug offenses, realized we had literally run out of all of our prison space, and decided to contract out private companies in order to lock up more people, and then paid those companies to incarcerate even more people. This system is absurd by any reasonable estimation, and we still haven't even discussed whether or not it's effective. To make a long story short, no.
It's probably not effective. I have also already watched another video where the Norwegian rate how likely it is that a person which was in prison commit a crime again, and this is very much higher in the United States than in Norway.
No, it's not effective. In the United States, we focus more on punishment than rehabilitation, and US prisons are certainly punishment. In fact, they're so inhumane that the United Nations has condemned them as abusive and torturous. And human rights organizations have long asserted that one of the prison industrial complex's favorite tools, solitary confinement, is literal torture. Once someone has been released from prison, it's much harder to find a job. And 2 out of 3 end up right back in a cell because their situation is so desperate. We've even seen people
There you see where it leads to. I mean, it is wanted that people commit crimes again, because then they can be locked up again, they can be used as slaves again. So it is a part of the system that the same people commit crimes again. So maybe it's not literally the goal which is written down somewhere, but the under the one of the goals in the prison system seems to be to treat people so bad that they stay criminal and commit crimes again. So you have your permanent underclass you can use for slave work.
Commit tiny crimes and purposefully get arrested because then at least they'd have a roof over their heads. When many Americans hear this, they'll shake.
That's a different video also about homelessness in Finland and how much better they do it with homelessness than in the United States. And maybe I watched it too, but yeah, it is. People who were homeless committed crimes so they can have a home again. That's so out of any reasonable word.
Shake their heads and say, you just can't fix some people. Completely.
You can't fix some people, and these people you can't fix, probably, so it seems, are people who support private prison, who support the slavery work, and probably the Democrats and the Republican. You can't fix those people who let themselves be elected for those parties and or support this kind of policy. Those people you can't probably fix.
Ignoring the fact that our prison system is not intended to fix anything. Again, this fits in perfectly with the average American mindset. Most people subjected to prison terms are poor. In America, we've been conditioned to believe that poor people are lazy, and therefore morally deficient and deserve...
That's also such a terribly take, not from second thought of course, but from the people he is talking about, that they think that poverty is something people choose or are responsible for themselves. When the people who say these things probably, I mean the rich ones, the capitalists, those people have put the people which are now poor in most cases into poverty through their policies and through the actions.
Of punishment. This, of course, ignores the fact that wealthy people are just as likely or even more likely to use drugs. But those people are rarely sentenced, often because they have important parents, or they can pay bail, or simply because their communities aren't heavily policed like lower income areas. We've effectively criminalized poverty. Can't pay a parking ticket? Jail. Can't pay bail? Prison term. No one will hire you when you get out? Serves you right for being a criminal. This mindset is truly horrific. It lacks even the barest shred of basic human decency. We cannot ignore the fact that systemic racism plays a large role in the American prison system. 2 men, 1 white and 1 black, charged for the same crime with the same criminal background, are often given different length prison sentences. Can you guess who gets the longer sentence? On average, black people are given 20% longer sentences for the same crime committed by a white person. Then you have white-collar crime. Banks have engaged in money laundering for drug cartels and other shady operations for years, bankrolling the very industry we throw people away for, and they caused the single largest economic crash since the Great Depression. Did any bankers get locked up for any significant time? Of course not. There are 2 separate justice systems in this country, one for the rich and one for everyone else. Okay, but what's the alternative? It's not fair to complain and then not propose a better way. Luckily for me, I don't have to come up with an entirely new system.
Norway, but in Finland and in Germany also, it's I think much better. There are probably differences between Germany, Sweden, and Finland and Norway, but yeah.
Plenty of vastly more humane, more modern, and more effective prison systems already exist. One shining example is Norway. With an incarceration rate of just 60 per 100,000, Norway stands out as a prime example after which we could model our own prison system. Norway's criminal justice system focuses not on punishment like we do in the US, but on rehabilitation and the principle of restorative.
Halden prison, I've already heard a lot about this prison. There's different videos about this. You can watch it, or I will maybe link it in the description.
Justice. The Norwegian criminal justice system caps prison sentences at 21 years and does not allow the death penalty. Whereas prisons in the US look more or less like slightly updated medieval dungeons, Norwegian prisons are quite different. This footage is from Halden Prison, which was completed in 2010 and is representative of Norway's incarceration philosophy. Everything is intended to foster an environment of improvement for their inmates. The rooms are reasonably comfortable and furnished with quality of life features like DVD players and TVs. The inmates can roam more or less freely, wear normal clothes, and make use of common areas and kitchens. There's a store where they can buy their own food. The architecture is specifically designed to allow those inside to see out into nature and observe the passage of time. US prisons, by contrast, are made as oppressive as possible. Little light from the outside world, cramped corridors, tiny, uncomfortable cells, and a relationship with the guards which can only be called antagonistic. That's another area where Norwegian prisons excel. Their correctional officers all complete a 2-year degree before they're able to work as what are called contact officers, which function as both guard and social worker. Halden Prison prides itself on fostering excellent interpersonal relationships between inmates and contact officers.
One of the contract officers, or also one of the persons in the or was it a different video? I'm not sure, but I have heard about someone saying that if you treat the prisoners as enemies, they will also become your enemy, and if you treat them in a humane way, they will also be humane. I think it was a person of the video which I couldn't upload.
Can interact freely, talk, play cards, make plans for the future, and just generally have a normal human experience in the prison. This is all part of the philosophy of normality. The idea is to make prison as close to life in the outside world as possible.
The idea also behind this is that the punishment itself is that you can't be, you are imprisoned, you are locked away, so you cannot go out with your friends, you cannot even meet your friends probably, or very often. Sometimes there are visits, but you cannot to close family, I think. You cannot you are locked, you're locked away, your freedom is taken away from you. So that's a punishment. So everything else they say that it's, I think also is good. It should be as normal as possible. So you see also that a better life is possible, and then you can help, they can help you and so on. But yeah, the idea is the punishment itself is that your freedom is taken away. Everything else, it would be just cruel if it would be much uncomfortable than in the outside world, much more uncomfortable than in the outside world.
So that when inmates have served their time, they're able to more easily adjust back to normal life. Again, this is in stark contrast to the US system. The goal of our system is to punish, to make people suffer so that they're afraid to commit another crime. Corrections officers in the US have very little required training, and relationships between guards and prisoners are truly awful. It's not uncommon for guards to brutalize or sexually assault the inmates. This cruelty is completely counterproductive. If the goal of our prisons was...
I mean, I would say that this guy deserves a hard punishment because he is just brutally towards other people. So, but of course, I forgot in the United States, inmates are not human beings. So he probably there's no punishment in any way for him.
Truly to rehabilitate, why have the guards, the only representatives from the outside world, treat the inmates like animals? Norway's recidivism rates are among the lowest in the world, with just 20% of inmates getting arrested again within 2 years. This isn't random. It came about by a concerted effort from Norwegian citizens to overhaul their criminal justice system. Back in the 80s and 90s, they were concerned about rising recidivism rates, so they did the logical thing and fixed the problem: the prisons. Modern Norwegian prisons are some of the very best in the world in terms of reducing recidivism and promoting a positive trajectory for inmates. They provide counseling, education, and as normal an experience as possible. What they've accomplished in the last few decades is truly remarkable, and should be seen as one of the world's best criminal justice systems. Another prime example is Finland. Finland is one of the happiest and safest countries in the world. They have access to universal healthcare, subsidized childcare, and free college education. They also have incredibly humane prisons. This man, serving a life sentence for murder, is not confined to a tiny...
Well, I also watched the video about this. I mean, there's a video about this also from Hassan Abi and other people I like to watch. So maybe I have some links in the description.
...cell for the rest of his life. He's not waiting for a lethal injection or months of solitary confinement. He's free to come and go as he pleases, and there aren't any cell blocks at all. Instead, the prison is laid out like a dormitory. He can attend classes at the local university, and his room at Loka prison is almost indistinguishable from a normal apartment. Like Norway, Finland believes in the principle of normality, that prisoners should be treated like human beings and provided all the opportunities to...
And probably he has been in a bit different prison before, and then through good behavior he came there and had this chance to do this. I imagine. I'm not sure about his background, so I'm not sure.
...prove themselves and get on a more productive path during their prison stay. Inmates receive counseling, job training, and interact with prison staff in a normal, human fashion. Because of these innovations and a dedication to actual rehabilitation, Finland's incarceration rate has dropped dramatically over the last 70 years, to just 1/4 of what it was in 1950, and it's now one of the lowest in Europe. By comparison, the US prison population has skyrocketed in that same period, despite our own crime rate dropping. Just to give you a sense of how barbaric and outdated our prison system seems to other developed nations, Finland now operates a prison museum in one of their old 19th
That's funny. That's very funny what is coming up next.
century prisons, as a sort of reminder of how terrible their system used to be. It is almost indistinguishable from a modern US prison. It's clear that the US has a long way to go before it can be considered a truly free nation.
I mean, what do you expect if you lock people up in such a cell? I mean, when you expect anything else than they commit the same crime again, then you're stupid.
Our horrific prison industrial complex is a permanent stain on this country's legacy. The systemic...
Yeah, moment, this is an interesting...
Our horrific prison industrial complex is a permanent stain...
So, United States incarcerated rate per 100,000, Russia, Ukraine, Poland, Turkey, Hungary, Czech Republic, UK, Spain, Portugal,
on this country's
Australia,
legacy.
Canada, Greece. But there's no China.
The systemic
Probably just from European countries.
racism, use of slave labor, inhumane treatment and outright torture of prisoners, and the commodification of human lives to be locked up in order to increase profits is truly wrong in every way. If we're actually angered by this and really want to make a change, we have positive examples to point to and say, this is what we want. It won't happen by itself. The only way things will change is the only way things have ever changed. By enough people coming together to say, enough is enough. We're trying something new. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that
I look forward when I see there also my picture at some point, maybe.
this kind of content is made possible by my patrons on Patreon. This sort of video, while very important, is something that sponsors won't touch. In order to pay the bills and keep this channel running, I rely on AdSense revenue, sponsors, and donations from generous viewers. By producing explicitly anti-capitalist content, I lose out on both sponsors and AdSense. If you enjoy the kind of videos I'm producing, and you're able to chip in even $1 a month, I would greatly appreciate the
I have $2 a month.
support. You can find my Patreon page, join our growing Discord server, and get early access to every episode at patreon.com/secondthought. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like. If you hated it, a thumbs down. You can check out my previous episodes by clicking the links on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.
So, yeah, I support him now. I think other people should do the same, if they can afford it only, of course. I can, I decided for this, but yeah. I like this video. I am very in favor of the same development also in other countries, of course. So, and if some of you have any idea about, or any video which I could watch, which might show how prison works in other countries, like for example Russia, China, India, or so on, leave it in the comments. And yeah, also like my video, go to Second Thought, subscribe for him, subscribe also for me if you want. It would also help me out a lot. I would like to have 25 subscribers by the end of the year. I also would take a look at my other videos, like my Morrowind Let's Play or Minecraft videos. So anyway, yeah. And in general, just write down if you want me to react to something. I will do so most likely. Okay, so yeah. I like this. I hope you all enjoyed this. Please subscribe to my channel. See you.